Welcome to English Story Cafe, my dear friends. What if I told you the man who created Hyundai, one of the biggest car companies in the world, once worked on muddy fields with no shoes, never went to college, and was so poor he could not afford a train ticket. So he ran 120 kilometers on foot just to chase a dream. This is not a motivational speech. This is not fiction. This is real. Today, you will hear the story of a boy who had nothing and built everything. A boy who had no money, no education, no power, but had one thing that changed his life, a decision to never stop trying. But why should you listen to this story? Because this is not just about business. This story will teach you how to fight when life hits you hard, how to believe when nobody believes in you, how to stand alone when the world shuts the door. And yes, this story will also improve your English. How? Because you are not just listening to English, you are feeling it. You are living inside a story. That is the secret to fluency. Not grammar books, not boring vocabulary lists, but real stories with real emotion told in easy, clear, and powerful English. So listen closely, because this episode might not just teach you English, it might change your life. Now, let us begin the story of the man who started it all. Let us go back. The year is 1915. We are in a small, poor village in Tongchon, North Korea. Yes, before Korea was divided. A boy named Chung Ju-yung is born into a family of farmers. They grow rice. They live in a straw roof house. They eat simple food, sometimes not enough. He is the eldest son in the family. That means he must help at the field every day. No shoes, no toys, no time to dream. From age 7, he carries water, cuts grass for cows, and helps plant rice. His father is strict and believes in one rule: work hard, do not dream. A farmer's son must become a farmer. But little Chung was different. Even as a child, he wanted more. He would stare at the mountains and think, is this all there is to life? When he was around 14 years old, he had a dream. He wanted to study, go to school, learn math, become a teacher. So one day, he secretly left home and walked miles to enroll in a school. But his father found out, and in anger, he dragged him back to the farm. Stop dreaming, his father said. Dreams do not feed hungry mouths. This was the first time life told him, stay small. But something inside Chung refused. A few years later, he tried again. He left home with only a little money and a big dream. This time, he wanted to go to the city, Seoul, but he did not have enough for a train ticket. So, what did he do? He ran. Yes, 120 kilometers on foot. No phone, no food. Just the belief that there is more beyond those rice fields. When he reached Seoul, he found a job at a construction site. He worked with bricks and cement from sunrise to sunset. His hands bled. His back hurt. But every night, he told himself, one day I will not just build houses. I will build something much, much bigger. After months of hard work, he saved enough money to start something small. With a partner, he opened a tiny rice shop in 1938. It was his first taste of business. But one day, his partner stole all the money and disappeared. He lost everything. Many people would have gone back to the village, but not Chung. He wiped his tears and said, money can be taken, but not my fire, not my vision. He started over from zero again. Over the next few years, he worked any job he could find, carrying bricks, delivering salt, fixing bicycles, cleaning shoes. He watched, he listened, he learned. Not from books, but from life. In 1940, after considering the restrictions imposed on Koreans in certain industries by the Japanese colonial government, Chung entered the automobile repair business. Using a service garage he purchased from a friend on a loan of 3,000 won, Chung started the Adu's service garage. Slowly, he understood how business works, how people think, how to earn respect, not just money. He watched. He listened. He learned. Not from books, but from life. And then World War II ended. Korea was in pieces, broken, divided. But Chung saw opportunity. Where others saw ruins, he saw future roads in 1946. After the liberation of Korea from Japanese control, Chung was around 31 years old, and he officially started his company. He named it Hyundai, which means modern in Korean. Think about that. A man who grew up in the rice fields barefoot without education started a company called Modern. He did not just want to build roads. He wanted to build the future. At first, Hyundai was just a small construction firm. They built roads, bridges, repair buildings, mostly small jobs, but his mindset was always different. Most people would say, "We are too small to take big projects." But Chung said, "We are small because we never take big projects." He started bidding for bigger jobs. He took risks. He hired people smarter than him, and he watched everything like a hawk. He did not sit in an office. He visited construction sites himself. He talked to workers. He checked every stone, every brick. He believed if you build something, it must be strong enough to carry the future. Then, in 1950, the Korean War began. North versus South. Brother against brother. Cities burned. Thousands died. For many businesses, it was the end. But for Chung Ju-yung, it was the beginning of something massive. He did not run. He did not shut down Hyundai. He looked at the destruction and thought, the country will need roads again. The country will need buildings again, and I will be the one to build them. During the war, Chung grew his construction business by winning orders from the United States. Military stationed in Korea, his workers were not just laborers. They were rebuilding their own homeland. This made Hyundai stronger, not just as a company, but as a name. People began to trust the name Hyundai because when everyone was afraid, Hyundai kept moving. After the war, Jung further focused on the construction business to rebuild South Korea from the ashes. In 1953, the company's first major contract was the restoration of the Goryeo Bridge, which had been destroyed during the Korean War. However, the project quickly turned into a disaster. Chung lacked the necessary heavy machinery, technical expertise, and experience to handle such a large-scale task. Progress was slow, and multiple safety incidents caused delays. To keep the project afloat, Chung had to take out additional loans, and his brothers sold their homes to help pay workers. But he did not give up. He learned from every mistake. One of the most famous and powerful moments in Jung's life came in 1957 when the South Korean government gave him a challenge. "We need a bridge built over the Han River. Can you do it?" Now, here is the truth. Hyundai had never built a bridge of that scale before. Other companies laughed. They said, "He does not even have an engineering degree. He is not a bridge builder." But Chung said, "If we keep saying we cannot, we will never learn how to do it." So he took the project. He gathered a team, hired engineers, studied every blueprint, visited bridges around the world. And then he started building. Every day he stood by the river watching, planning, correcting. And the Han River Bridge was completed. The largest single construction project since the Korean War. The same people who laughed at him now stood in silence. Because a rice farmer's son had just built one of Korea's most important bridges. This was not just a bridge. This was a symbol, a message to the world. South Korea is rising, and Hyundai is helping it rise. After the bridge, Hyundai's reputation exploded. The government began trusting him more. He was given highways to build, dams, ports, shipyards. Chung won government contracts and became responsible for building much of South Korea's transportation infrastructure, including the Soyang Dam in 1967, the Jongbu Expressway in 1970, and the Kori nuclear power plant. among others. But Chung was not satisfied because deep down he still remembered being a poor boy with no shoes. He wanted more than just money. He wanted transformation. He said, "We cannot just copy the world. We must create." So he made a decision that shocked everyone. Hyundai will build ships. People laughed again. South Korea has no experience in shipbuilding. We do not even have the technology. But Chung smiled and said, "Then we will learn. We will start. We will try." In the early 1970s, Chung Ju-yung launched Hyundai Heavy Industries, entering the shipbuilding sector despite having no prior experience. Skeptics doubted his decision, but Chung's vision proved transformative. He constructed the world's largest shipyard in Ulsan and secured international contracts to build oil tankers, catapulting Hyundai into the global spotlight. By the 1980s, Hyundai was the world's largest shipbuilder, a title it still holds today. From mud to metal, from rice fields to global factories, Chung was not building just a company anymore. He was building a dream factory. By the end of the 1970s, Chung had built roads, bridges, buildings, ports, ships. But there was still one thing missing: cars. South Korea imported all its cars from Japan and the West. But Chung asked a dangerous question. Why cannot Korea make its own car? No one had an answer, so he did it himself. And that is where the next part of this story begins. By the end of the 1970s, Chung had built roads, bridges, buildings, ports, ships. But there was still one thing missing: cars. South Korea imported all its cars from Japan and the West. But Chung asked a dangerous question. Why cannot Korea make its own car? No one had an answer, so he did it himself. And that is where the next part of this story begins. Chung Ju-yung, the boy who once walked 120 kilometers barefoot, had now built Korea's first highways, shipyards, and ports. He was admired, trusted, respected. But he still was not satisfied because deep down he remembered something. He remembered how Korea used to import cars from Japan, America, and Europe, and how people believed that Koreans could never build a car, that making cars was only for rich countries with powerful machines and high technology. But Chung, as always, believed in something else. He believed in his people. He said, "We have built roads, now we must build the wheels that will run on them." His team was shocked. "Cars? We do not have the knowledge. We do not have engineers. We do not have the tools." But Chung simply replied, "Then we will learn, we will build the tools, we will train the engineers." That is what Hyundai means: modern. This is the future. This was not a business decision. This was a national decision. He wanted to build a car for Korea, and that is where the story truly accelerates. In 1960, Chung Ju-yung founded Hyundai Motor Company, entering the automotive market with ambitions to produce affordable cars for South Korea. Hyundai's first model, the Hyundai Cortina, was developed in partnership with Ford. In May 1960, Hyundai Motor began the construction of a manufacturing plant in Ulsan, with an annual capacity of 5,000 cars. In November, Hyundai Motor began the production of its very first model, the Cortina, which was made with 21% Korean-made parts. While the Cortina was a hit in Europe, it struggled in Korea due to poor road conditions. The Cortina's failure pushed Chung to rethink his strategy. In the early 1970s, Chung knew that building a car required something he did not yet have: experience. So what did he do? He flew to Britain. He met with George Turnbull, a top engineer who had worked at British Leyland, a respected British car manufacturer. Turnbull was surprised. Why would a Korean businessman with no car company want to hire him? But Chung did not beg. He did not flatter. He simply showed his vision. He said, "I do not want to copy foreign cars. I want to build something new. I want your help." George Turnbull was impressed. He agreed, and he was not alone. Chung hired 5 top British car engineers, all experts in engines, transmissions, design, and safety. He brought them to Korea in 1974. Chung ended the Ford partnership and decided Hyundai would develop its own car. Partnering with Mitsubishi for engine technology and hiring European engineers, Chung created the Hyundai Pony, as the Korean government aimed to spur economic growth by underwriting the production of Korean-designed vehicles. Hyundai hired Italian designer Giorgio Giugiaro and British engineers to develop the Pony, Korea's very first mass-produced car, released in 1975, which was powered by a Mitsubishi inline 4-cylinder engine. Launched in 1975, the Pony became South Korea's first mass-produced car. Affordable and durable, it dominated the Korean market, with 4 out of every 10 cars sold being ponies. The success of the Pony marked Hyundai's transition from an assembler of foreign designs to an independent automaker. When the first Hyundai Pony was unveiled in Seoul, the crowd went silent. And then they clapped, cheered, cried. We can do it. We are not small anymore. But creating the Pony was just the beginning. The real battle began when Hyundai tried to sell cars outside Korea. The big global car companies like Toyota, Ford, General Motors, Honda laughed. They said, "Korean cars, please. They are toys." But Chung had heard this before. When he built bridges, they laughed. When he built ships, they laughed. Now he was building cars. And again, they laughed. But he had a weapon they did not expect: courage, discipline, and endless improvement. He started small. First, Hyundai sold cars to countries like Ecuador, Egypt, and Chile. Then slowly he entered Canada, and in 1986 he made a bold move. Hyundai entered the United States market. They introduced a model called the Hyundai Excel. It was not fancy, but it was affordable, fuel-efficient, easy to drive. People in America were curious. And guess what? In the very first year, Hyundai sold over 168,000 cars in the United States. That was a record. The same companies that laughed now began to worry. But success was not permanent. As Hyundai sold more cars, something started to go wrong. Many cars had problems with engines, air conditioning, parts. Customers started complaining. American newspapers began calling Hyundai a low-quality brand. Sales dropped. Respect vanished. And once again, Chung Ju-yung stood on the edge of disaster. His team panicked. They said, "Let us reduce production. Let us stop exporting." But Chung said no. He said, "If we are not willing to improve, we do not deserve success." So he made a huge decision. Hyundai would rebuild everything. New quality checks, better materials, stronger testing. He said, "Let us not compete on price. Let us compete on pride." And year after year, Hyundai improved. They did not just make cars. They made better cars. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Hyundai had transformed. The world slowly began to see Hyundai not as cheap, but as reliable, smart, and well-built. The same company that once could not build a single tire was now winning international car awards. In America, people began saying Hyundai is not just a good car for the money. It is a good car, period, after the rise of Hyundai cars in the global market. Something strange began to happen in South Korea. People no longer just saw Hyundai as a company. They saw it as hope. Because whenever the country faced a problem, Hyundai stepped in. Whenever something seemed too big, too impossible, too expensive, there was one man who always said, "We will do it." That man was Chung Ju-yung. But this new phase of life was not about small ideas anymore. It was about rebuilding a country's future, one massive dream at a time. By the early 1990s, South Korea had transformed. It had moved from poverty to power, from survival to growth. And much of that growth had one thing in common: Hyundai's name on it. They were not just making cars anymore. They were building dams, nuclear power plants, oil refineries, high-speed trains, steel mills, industrial parks, container ships, global expressways. Chung won government contracts and became responsible for building much of South Korea's transportation infrastructure. And this was not by accident. This was Chung's mission. He believed if we only copy the world, we will always be second. But if we build the future ourselves, we can lead. And the Korean people began to believe too. You see, Hyundai was no longer just a brand. It had become a national symbol. Whenever Koreans bought a Hyundai car, they were not just buying transportation. They were buying confidence. They were saying, "Look at us now. We build our own future." Chung knew this. He knew the responsibility was bigger than business. He once said, "Every time we build a new factory, we are feeding thousands of homes." Business is not only about profit. It is about people. You might think after decades of building everything, Chung would slow down. But no. Even in his 70s, he kept visiting work sites, wearing his signature suit and white safety helmet. He walked through hot steel factories, dusty ports, frozen shipyards, talking to workers, asking questions, making notes. He never acted like a king. He acted like a foreman because deep inside he still saw himself as that barefoot boy who once cleaned bricks for a few coins. His hunger for growth never faded. And this hunger led to one of the boldest ideas of his life. In the late 1990s, when Chung was in his 80s, he shocked the world again. He announced that he would travel to North Korea. Remember, this was the same North Korea that had fought South Korea in the Korean War. The same country that was politically frozen, dangerous, closed. Most South Korean businessmen would never go there. But Chung Ju-yung was not like most men. He believed we are one people. We speak the same language. We must rebuild peace, and so in 1998 he crossed the border not with words, not with weapons, but with 500 cows. Yes, 500 cows. Why? Because he said during the war, North Korea had taken cows from his family's land. So now in peace, he was returning the favor, not with anger, but with forgiveness. It was not just a political move. It was a human move. News channels around the world showed the image of trucks filled with cows crossing the demilitarized zone led by an old man in a suit. It was powerful. It was emotional. It was unforgettable. That one act opened a small door between North and South. And it was Hyundai's founder who turned the key. In the final years of his life, Chung started stepping back from day-to-day operations, but he never stopped thinking. His diary, written in simple Korean, showed pages filled with thoughts, ideas, plans. He still visited his offices, still asked about construction projects, still studied world markets. But his body was weakening. His health was fading. And slowly, the man who once worked 18 hours a day, who once ran 120 kilometers barefoot, now walked slower. But his mind, sharp as ever. He knew time was short. So he began writing letters to his sons, his board members, and his country. He reminded them, never be satisfied with what you have built. Keep asking, what can we build next? On March 21, 2001. At the age of 85, Chung Ju-yung passed away peacefully. The boy from the village was gone, but what he left behind could never be buried. After his death, South Korea declared a national moment of silence. Television stations paused. News anchors cried. Even his competitors, people who once criticized him, stood up to honor him. Why? Because Chung Ju-yung was not just a businessman. He was a builder of dreams, a man who proved that you do not need a college degree to change the world. You do not need permission to build something great. You do not need to be rich to become the foundation of a country's pride. He started life with nothing but dust on his feet and fire in his chest. He ended life with factories, ships, highways, satellites, and the love of millions. And today, the name Hyundai travels on roads across the world, in the United States, in India, in Europe, in Africa, because of the fire he carried inside him. Through determination and a willingness to learn from failure, Chung transformed Hyundai from a small repair shop into a global powerhouse, influencing industries as diverse as construction, shipbuilding, and automobiles. His leadership not only shaped Hyundai's destiny but also played a pivotal role in South Korea's economic development. Today, Hyundai is recognized as one of the world's most influential brands, standing as a symbol of South Korea's industrial transformation and global success. Chung's legacy lives on in the company he built and the lives he touched, and in the countless leaders inspired by his story. So what is the real legacy of Chung Ju-yung? It is not just Hyundai. It is not just factories or bridges or awards. His legacy is this truth. Even if you are born with nothing, if you keep moving, if you keep building, one day the world will. Drive on your roads, sail in your ships, and believe in your story. That is the story of the boy who created Hyundai, and it is a story that must never be forgotten. Let this be more than a podcast. Let this be a message. If you have a dream, fight for it. If you have a setback, rise again. And if the world tells you cannot, remember this name, Chung Ju-yung, and reply to the world with his famous words, "Have you tried?" And now, before we close this story, let us look at what Hyundai has become today. The company that started with nothing, not even enough money for a train ticket, is now one of the biggest companies in the world. Today, Hyundai is worth billions. Its cars run in more than 200 countries. Its factories give jobs to hundreds of thousands of people around the globe. And Hyundai has built some of the most expensive and advanced ships in the world, including massive container ships, high-tech oil tankers, military vessels. And their luxury car brand, Genesis, now competes with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Lexus, and wins international awards. All of this started from a boy with no shoes. This is not just the story of a man. This is the story of what is possible. So if life is hard right now, if you feel poor, alone, or small, if people say you are not smart enough, not rich enough, not strong enough, then remember this story and remember this name, Chung Ju-yung. Because if he can do it, why not you? And if you want more stories like this, stories that inspire you, stories that teach you English, stories that make you believe in yourself again, then subscribe to English Story Cafe now, 'cause we do not just tell stories. We give you the courage to write your own.